Welcome, everyone, to another episode of A Sister and Her Mister. Today we have our special guest, Dr. Felice Gersh. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Gersh.
Well, it's always my pleasure. I love working with you too.
We actually have a surprise
Mm-hmm.
that I've been holding in. I want to tell you something. I'm pregnant.
Doctor said you got PCOS. Now go on, girl, just lose some weight. Till I took the symptoms into my own hands and reversed them naturally.
I'm so excited to hear that. I was hoping that could be the news because I knew that was a goal.
Thank you.
Yes. We were just recently working together towards that goal. I mean, thankfully, it came easy for us.
Yeah,
And also,
I know. Oh my
the
God.
first.
This is how we want it to be for every couple. You
absolutely.
are now the role model of everyone listening who is aspiring to conceive.
Thank you. Well,
Yes.
it is really all thanks to you. And that first doctor visit that I had with you, it was maybe at this point like 14 years ago. And I had recently been diagnosed with PCOS, and you just lit a fire under me. I remember in that appointment, you told me so many things that I could do to reverse it. And for the rest of the years until today, I've been doing all of those things and doing my best to stick to it. And that is why we were able to get pregnant so quickly on the first try. I don't think this could have been possible 10 years ago when I stepped into your office. And I love that we have you on this episode right now.
Yeah, like that, even though it was on our first try, it's not that it was easy. It was actually from all the years of you working on your body, on your health, and everything you did up until this point that, helped us achieve this, So thank you, Tallene. Thank you, doctor. It was amazing.
Well, it's really the most natural thing on earth is to conceive and then create a new life. And yet for women with PCOS, it often seems beyond unattainable. And so I think this is so critical for every woman and couple who is struggling to conceive and feels often hopeless, that the emotions that are so low and so destroying to a relationship, to enjoying life, and then to help facilitate fertility for the purpose of conceiving, but for the purpose also of being optimally healthy. Because I always talk about how fertility is a vital sign of female and male health, that someone who is involuntarily, I'm not talking about someone who had a tubal ligation or such, but someone who is involuntarily infertile is by definition unhealthy. So it's for so many reasons, it's so important to do everything to facilitate fertility. And that's what you were working on. And you just, proved to everyone out there that it's possible to conceive even on trial number one, when you've prepped your body to be what it should be. It should be so easy, but it isn't easy for women with PCOS. The things that other women take for granted are just not easy when you have PCOS. And that's what, of course, we'll do a little bit of a deep dive into.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember about a month ago or so, Tallene had her last appointment with you, and I think you two went through like a last checklist. And man, Tallene did her homework. She did everything. She ate everything you had given her, like the fiber, you say the list every day. You had your checklist going through it.
I had low cholesterol, so every day I ate eggs. I made him take me out to a lobster dinner every weekend.
It's so funny. I'm glad you brought that up because so many people are trying so hard to lower their cholesterol. And there are many women with PCOS who do have high cholesterol, and that in itself can be a problem because it can be symbolic. It's not as much the cholesterol as why the cholesterol is so high. It's really high because they're under too much stress, too much cortisol, which will trigger it, or they're nutritionally deficient in something, hormonally imbalanced and so on, or they may have hypothyroidism, which can also cause high cholesterol, But there's always the flip side. It's like you want everything to be just optimal. And so there's such a thing as too much of a good thing and too little of a good thing, because cholesterol is a good thing. That's why we have
Yeah.
it. It's not inherently evil, it's a good thing. But too little is also a problem. Most people are always thinking too much, because in general, women with PCOS tend to have too much, but there are women who have too little. And the optimal total cholesterol is probably not below, to get pregnant, not below 140 or 150, because cholesterol is a key player in making steroid hormones. It's like really important. And so there are some people that have to work on eating more cholesterol, because you can't always come up with a solution to get the liver to make more. And 90% of the cholesterol circulating in the blood is produced in the liver. And the people who tend to have the very lowest cholesterol tend to be, in many ways, the healthiest eater vegan people, because sometimes I can't believe I've had patients who eat only plants, and they really eat healthy plants, but they never eat any saturated fat. They don't eat any animals. And I'm not a pro-vegan person. I'm for like a little bit of animal and a little bit of saturated fat, because they've actually shown that zero saturated fat in your diet can increase infertility. So not having enough of the proper fats is a problem. And so what did we have to do with you? We had to have you eat cholesterol.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how, there's like no magic to push a button and then your cholesterol will come out more from your liver. So, and I wasn't going to tell you to eat garbage, or I
Right.
want you to stress out and get your cortisol really high. So, so we do the obvious, and you just eat more cholesterol containing foods.
Mhm.
And also a little bit of animal with a little bit of saturated fat. So
Mhm.
for vegans, sometimes I have to beg on my hands and knees to just eat a little bit of animal, and also during pregnancy as well. And sometimes they'll agree, when they're really hardcore, like to have maybe some like organic ghee or butter, because that has cholesterol and saturated fat in it. I mean,
Right.
it's like, but you were so easy. You're like
I mean,
perfect patient,
at
I
this
said,
point.
eat egg yolks, and then you ate egg yolks, I'd say eat more lobster. Oh my goodness,
But
It was fine.
and like speaking of cholesterol and other levels, when someone with PCOS comes to you, let's say they're planning on conceiving or they're struggling with fertility, where would you usually begin? We of course want to help everyone who's listening.
Mhm.
Like how you help Tallene, we want you to help everyone listening today too. So I think it's gonna be really
Absolutely.
helpful for everyone
And,
to hear those.
I was excited to have low cholesterol because I remember how many problems I had when I first came to
Yeah.
you.
Well,
Mm.
It
because
was
we
a
were
laundry
working on
list.
your diet. I know.
I was
I
like,
mean,
low cholesterol.
I much
Big deal.
prefer your problem to other problems,
Right.
because that one's much more easily addressed.
Yeah.
So when I have like a brand new PCOS patient who walks in the door, and then of course I would want to do a very thorough history, like how long have you been trying to conceive, and what forms of birth control, and of course how old that person is so important, because if it's someone that's already getting very close to 40 or even over 40, I have a really limited time span to work with, because if I can't get them optimized, I will often, depending on how old they are, I won't go more than 6 months with them before I tell them, make an appointment with an IVF center, because I don't want to lose any window of opportunity here, but I do want to have a minimum of 3 months minimum to really optimize, even if they do IVF or some other, more advanced fertility type of thing, like using ovulation induction drugs, because women, as a general statement, women with PCOS have the highest failure rates of IVF of any group. So the last thing I want is to send someone right off into IVF, and then lo and behold, they fail, they miscarry, or they have no good quality embryos. And so I want to work with them to optimize their basic health. Like, you worked on it for a long time, but what do I do when somebody walks in the door and they're 41? I have such a limited time span to work with, so we have to be really aggressive. So of course I want to do all that historical taking in of, their information. And then I want labs. It's really important for me to measure what's going on in a woman. So women with PCOS tend to have high levels of systemic, that means body-wide inflammation. And so I want to do a lot of inflammation testing. So, the sort of the mainstay test is what's called HS, or high sensitivity C-reactive protein. And that's what we call a reactive inflammatory marker. So it can go up and down on a day-to-day basis based on if you have a cold, if you didn't get enough sleep last night, if you were really stressed out. But so you have to sort of take it in stride and look at it over time. But if somebody has a really high level, especially over 10, that's a very high indicator that they may have an autoimmune condition going on. And women with PCOS tend to have much higher rates of autoimmune diseases because, we'll talk about it, of impaired gut barrier, also known as leaky gut. So, I definitely want to get inflammation markers. And there are other inflammation markers I like to look at, like homocysteine, which is also a measure of vascular health. It's an independent risk marker, but it also tells me something about their B12 levels and their folate levels. And in addition, I like to look at their ADMA. ADMA is just a marker that we can use as a surrogate marker for nitric oxide, a really key gas that tends to be low when we need it high. And women with PCOS do not make enough nitric oxide. And there are ways to work around it. Now, nitric oxide is produced predominantly in arteries by an enzyme called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which is activated by estradiol, the estrogen made by the ovaries. And women with PCOS, generally speaking, do not have proper ovarian production of estradiol. And so they do not have proper nitric oxide production. But there are always alternative ways, things that we can do. One is, of course, we can give estradiol, and that sometimes is very beneficial. But in addition, we can give nitrate vegetables, which I'm sure you were eating. So my personal favorite are beets. And people, a lot of people know about beets and beet powder. And you may think, like, what's so special about beets anyway? Because they are a high nitrate vegetable. And nitrates in the mouth get converted by enzymes by the mouth microbes, the bacteria in the mouth, when you have the right ones, which sometimes women with PCOS don't have because they have alterations of all their microbial populations for the negative, called the microbiomes. But the mouth microbiome is a very important one. And when you have the right kind, you make types of enzymes that are made by the microbes of the mouth, and they turn the nitrates into nitrites. And then if you have the right minerals and vitamins in your stomach and further down in your gut, you convert the nitrites into nitric oxide. And that can diffuse out into your arteries to make your arteries healthier. And also, it helps with your ovarian function, and it also even helps with brain function. So we need to have all that nitric oxide, but I can't measure it, but I can measure ADMA. And if you have high ADMA, it is an indicator of low nitric oxide. So I do want to measure that one as well. And sometimes, depending on the age, I'll measure LPPLA2. That's an enzyme. And if it's high, it's made by white blood cells. If it's high, it's an indicator that there's inflammation in the arteries. Now, why does that matter? Well, of course, vascular health is really important because you need blood supply to every organ system, including the ovaries. That's how you get nutrients and oxygen. But it's going to be even more important, as important as that is, during pregnancy. Because one of the things that happens with women who are PCOS patients when they are successful in getting pregnant, and of course this applies to you too, is that they have much higher rates of pregnancy-related complications like preeclampsia, which is really a vascular disease. And they have higher rates of gestational diabetes, which of course is much higher in women with PCOS because they, as a rule, tend to be insulin resistant. And by age 40, women with PCOS have 7 times higher rates of diabetes than the average population of women, the non-PCOS population.
Wow.
So this is like a really big deal. So we want to, know what the vascular health is of women before they conceive, both for their fertility and because what is the point of getting pregnant? If you have serious complications, you end up having to be delivered 3.5 months early because you get, HELP syndrome and eclampsia, severe hypertension. That's not our goal. We want healthy women having healthy pregnancies and healthy babies. So we want to know everything about every patient before they conceive to optimize every facet of conception. The first step is conceiving. The next is getting through that pregnancy and being healthy the whole time and having a beautiful, healthy baby. So we want to make sure that the propensity doesn't become the reality, of complications. And
Correct.
so we want to measure all of that. And then I want to look at the lipids. I want to know, how's your cholesterol and how, are you making enough reverse cholesterol? How much is coming out of your liver? And so I want to know all about your lipids. And then I look at thyroid. It's so critical to have the right function of thyroid to conceive and during pregnancy. And now in the conventional world, I'm happy to say thyroid has finally gotten some attention. So the ideal TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, for women who are trying to conceive and during pregnancy is a 1 up to a 2.5. So
That's pretty low.
sorry. Okay.
No.
Don't worry. We'll cut that out. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So the ideal level for women trying to conceive and during pregnancy for TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is 1 to 2.5. And so we really need to look at that. And then if necessary, give supplemental thyroid hormone. And the thyroid hormone that crosses the placenta is T4, levothyroxine, okay? Not T3. So T3, I'm all for T3. We need T3. But T3, if we give that in pregnancy, it goes to the mom. And that may be important, but it's not going to the baby, okay? And we want to make sure the baby isn't hypothyroid. So T4 would be what we would be the dominant supplementation. T3 if we need it for maternal mental health and other things, okay? But that's not going to the baby. Only T4 crosses the placenta. So we want to look at thyroid. I also always check, and this is not routine, I check thyroid antibodies because, as I mentioned, autoimmune diseases are so much more prevalent in women with PCOS, and the most common is Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroid. So I get the anti-thyroglobulin, anti-TPO, and thyroglobulin antibodies because I want to know. Now, we already know because this was proven like in 2014, so more than a decade ago. Research originated from China, and then it was duplicated in many other places. And that is that women with PCOS have leaky gut. They have dysbiosis of their gut microbiota. So they have the wrong microbes in their gut. And the reason for that, it's a combination of autonomic dysregulation. So that means that they have they're always in a more stressed out state, okay? Comes with the territory of being PCOS. And that has a big impact on gut health and the microbes and leaky gut. They don't have enough estradiol, which is really what underlies the too much stress factor and the autonomic dysregulation. They have too much testosterone, which also is a contributor to gut dysbiosis. So, we have sort of a cascade of events that starts with too little estradiol, but then there are additive factors that go into creating this gut dysbiosis and leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut, it's like a chronic infection. Think of it as a chronic infection. So you have gut microbes. We'll just say bacteria. There's also other things in there. There's viruses, archaea, there's fungi, but we'll just say bacteria. So you have bacteria leaking from inside the gut, inside where the intestines are holding the food and all that digestive stuff. and it comes between the lining cells into the body proper. Okay, now 70+% of all the immune cells of the body line the gut, and then they activate. And women with PCOS have a lower fuse, you might say, a lower trigger to activating their immune cells because they don't have enough estradiol. Estradiol is sort of the controller of the immune cells. And without enough estradiol, they go into sort of a more inflamed state, okay? And they activate with creating inflammatory products called inflammatory cytokines at a lower threshold. And this was proven, by the way, back in 1998 by a friend of mine who's a professor at Indiana University. So we know that the immune cells have a lower threshold to creating inflammation, which of course underlies a lot of the problems of women with PCOS, is this chronic state of inflammation. So now you have the immune cells creating an inflammatory response. Well, part of the inflammatory response, second degree, is creating antibodies. The first step is just explosion of inflammation, but the second step is creating antibodies. The antibodies are directed against the microbes entering through the leaky gut. But it turns out, and this is chronic, so it's ongoing, month after month after month. So that's why it's like a chronic infection. So it turns out that the building blocks of life itself, like the DNA, the building blocks, the nucleotides of DNA and RNA, are the same in every living creature, including single cell creatures like bacteria. So the way I think of it is that we have all the building blocks. So we're like the most complex Lego structure, okay? And a bacteria is like a single Lego. Okay, we're like Legoland on fire. Okay, so but we have similarities. It's like wild, isn't it? We have nucleotides. It's not like unlimited what builds DNA, you know? So it turns out over time, when you have this chronic infection ongoing and you have these microbes coming in, that the antibodies against the microbes cross-react against us. And there's a word for that. It's called molecular mimicry. Think of it as mistaken identity. You know, like you have a lineup and you say, he did it. Because I remember the culprit had short, dark brown hair and was wearing, wire-rimmed glasses. Well, everyone who fits that description isn't the culprit. But, we know that eyewitnesses are notoriously wrong, right? They pick the wrong person. They all look alike to them, whatever. So, well, that's what happens with our immune cells. They think, oh, well, this looks just like that microbe, only it's your thyroid. So they start making antibodies against you. Molecular mimicry, mistaken identity. And that's how most autoimmune diseases actually start. And the most common is thyroid, but it could be others. Oh my goodness. It could be like you pick any autoimmune disease. And
I've read about,
start.
oh, sorry.
No, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was saying I read about how gluten does that.
Well, gluten, what happens with gluten, and there's also a thing called gluten sensitivity, which there is no test for. You could say the test of life. So that's why everyone who has leaky gut, which is all women with PCOS, should avoid gluten. I'm glad you brought that up.
Wow.
I'd say all women, because there is no test for gluten sensitivity. And that can cause gut inflammation. It's like fire to fire. We don't like, injury to injury. We don't want to magnify the problem. But when you have autoimmune, like proven that that's what, if it goes to the end stage of autoimmune celiac disease, well, the end stage of autoimmune gluten disease is called celiac disease. That's where you have permanent damage to the gut lining, permanent damage. Some can heal, but usually there's permanent damage to the villi and you don't absorb nutrients properly and it's never right again. That's end stage. We don't wait for end stage. But the thing is that once you have that problem, you are more likely to get any other autoimmune disease. That is correct. So celiac is often the first step to other autoimmune diseases, and even worse than that, if you can consider it, to immune-related cancers like lymphomas, leukemias, and such. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
we definitely want to do a gluten elimination for women with PCOS. It's just not that hard.
I found that it's very easy at this point in my life. In the beginning, it wasn't, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard.
yeah. And with autoimmune conditions and molecular mimicry, can it come to a stage where the autoimmune cells are also like attacking the ovaries and like impacting fertility?
Um, yes, that actually does exist. That's not really been shown, like
Oh, okay.
per se, in women with PCOS, but that is considered, and that's not just considered, it's proven as one of the causes of premature ovarian failure or insufficiency.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that there, it's actually autoimmune based. Sometimes it's also related to antibodies against mitochondria, and we'll talk about mitochondria. That's another very big important thing in women with PCOS is mitochondrial dysfunction, but also adrenal antibodies are also related to premature ovarian insufficiency. So you're spot on. Every single structure in the body could be hit by self-induced antibody production. That's why clearing up leaky gut and also looking at other sources of chronic infection and having proper immune health is like critically important for every aspect of health and life, including fertility. You know, because we know that some women actually have infertility. They could be PCOS women or just other women with infertility because they make antibodies that kill their husband's sperm or
Wow.
even it killed the embryo. Yeah, these are real things. So that's why those women are often put on like antibodies. I mean, antibody. Those women are often put on aspirin to try to reduce that, and
Interesting.
sometimes heparin because they tend to have more clotting that occurs as well that can mess up things. So, you know, there's a lot of things that go into infertility that could involve women with or without PCOS. Just because a woman has PCOS doesn't mean she doesn't have other things going on, right? So
Yeah.
Right.
you can have, unfortunately, you're not only allowed one problem. You
Yeah.
know, the gates can be wide open for multiple problems. And also male, you know, just because a woman has PCOS doesn't mean you should ignore the husband, the partner.
Correct. Yeah.
No, because generally speaking, if we look across all infertility, 40% female factor, 40% male factor, 20% both. So, you know,
Yeah.
can't assume that just because you know one of the partners has a problem, the other one is home free. No, you
Oh,
can't.
true. Yeah. That's why we both got checked with you as well.
That's
We
right.
did a full
Yes.
test on myself, first Tallene as well, but like we did a full test. Luckily for me, everything was pretty good. You know, just a couple of things that we
Yeah.
worked on together and everything became even better. But yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. So
A
it's
really, really
important
good process.
not to forget the other half of the baby making team.
Yeah. And then
Right.
you
Really
mentioned mitochondria. Does that also involve like checking for CoQ10 and those kinds of like
I
supplements?
do. I do measure. I didn't, I'm so glad you brought that up. I do measure many micronutrients because once again, if you have gut problems, you're going to have some degree of digestive problems. Women with PCOS will often have many digestive problems. They have high rates of GERD, gastroesophageal reflux. They have irritable bowel syndrome that's more common with diarrhea, constipation, or mixed. So, oh yeah, they do have more digestive issues. They have more problems with their gallbladder, more gallstones. So you got to look. They have women with PCOS have much higher rates of abnormal fat deposits. So it's hepatic metabolic steatosis, and always known before, and we still use the old term, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So all of these things are more prevalent. So, you know, and so we want to look at nutrients. CoQ10 is one that I do measure. I look at omega-3 levels, B12, iron. Oh my goodness, you definitely want to know ferritin and iron levels. Very, very important. You can't make thyroid properly if you don't have some very key nutrients like zinc, copper, selenium, iron. You need these micronutrients, and so I like to measure them, and they're very often low, you know. So then we know how to do targeted supplementation. So
Yeah.
these are all like really important things to measure. And when it comes to mitochondria, we already know Okay, some things have already been found out, so we don't have to keep finding out what we already know. It's like I can, but I don't have to test every woman with PCOS to see if she has leaky gut because that's been done a lot. Okay, so sometimes I do get tests for gut microbiota, and I want to see just how bad things are. Like I know things are bad, but how bad are they? So, but I don't do that on everybody because I don't have to test what I already know because these tests cost money. I'd
Oh
rather
yeah.
people spend their money on something that is going to change outcome, like buying better food or, getting massages or even acupuncture or getting a vagus nerve stimulator. I don't want people wasting their money on lab tests that aren't going to change outcome. I don't need to test what I already know. Okay. So I only like to test what I don't know. Okay. So, but it's really important to understand that mitochondria, in order to work properly, and we know that mitochondria are all not, in women with PCOS, by definition, they have mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, how do I know that? Not just counting the tests. There's been lots of studies and things showing that. Because what's essential, absolutely essential for mitochondrial function? One is estradiol. And I already know that women with PCOS have reduced production of estradiol. And that's a whole nother story of, what's going on in women with PCOS and fundamentally what went wrong. But if we just take that as, for now, a fundamental, okay? Women with PCOS have a problem with the production of estradiol. If you look at mitochondria, so what the heck are mitochondria anyway? They're really critical organelles. They're little structures that are in cells, and they have multiple functions. Often the most famous function is the production of energy. Now, that's not like a trivial function because energy is what makes us alive. Like, if like we're energetic creatures. So everyone knows, because you've seen enough television shows or movies, that if somebody has a flat EKG, it's supposed to go, you get here's the EKG, and then, in the operating room, it's flat. What does that mean? Dead? Yeah, dead, right? It means there's no electrical activity. What is electrical activity? It's energy, okay? And the same thing with the brain. If the EEG of the brain and it's flatlining, that person has brain death, okay? And then it's like time to plan your organ transplants, right? Like, okay, organ donor. I mean, these are horrible situations. Okay, we need energy. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but one of the most energy demanding organs are the ovaries. Oh my goodness, the ovaries need tremendous amounts of energy to mature an egg from scratch. It's a primordial egg cell, and then it has to be matured, and you have to mature several up to a point. And then you have to, that magical thing, we don't know how that works. That one is, I call it the special chosen one. How does one egg, like your little embryo, okay? How did the egg get chosen? We don't know. How did that egg get chosen out of all the eggs? It's like the miracle of life. It really is. But there's this magic that happens and one egg gets chosen. And then that egg has to really mature very rapidly. And then it has to get all cleaned up. And then it has to be exploded out of the ovary. That takes, like, talk about rocket boosters. Like this is like amazing amount of energy that goes into that. And then you have the energy to convert into the corpus luteum, a whole new structure that's triggered into production by luteinizing hormone. So you need all this energy to create this brand new structure in the ovary that creates massive amounts of progesterone. And then, of course, you then have to keep making the estrogen too, the estradiol. And all of this is happening. This takes so much energy in that ovary. And people don't realize it's a really energy-needing organ. And for that, you need to have really functional mitochondria. Women with PCOS don't have this. And the mitochondria do even more than just that. Mitochondria control the cell cycle. So it tells yucky old cells in the body when they should die and when they should live. And when you have old yucky cells in the body that don't die, they create even more systemic inflammation and can even turn into cancer cells. We know that women with PCOS have significantly higher rates of cancer of multiple types of cancer. Now, it used to be we only thought uterine cancer. That's not true. It's multiple different types of cancers are higher in women with PCOS. And so if without adequate functioning mitochondria, they're not only not going to have enough energy to actually take care of all the needs of their ovarian function, but they're not going to have proper function elsewhere. What else is really critical for proper pregnancy is the mitochondria of the heart. The heart is incredibly energetic. In a pregnancy, this is coming for you, okay? The heart has to pump over 50% more blood volume during pregnancy than non-pregnancy. Well, that takes a much more energetic heart. To that end, you need to have plenty of estrogen. The estrogen causes the mitochondria of the heart to work better, and even the estrogen metabolites and estrogen-related receptors. We don't even know what binds to the receptor, but if you don't have enough estrogen in the neighborhood, it won't bind. So you need to have really robust amounts of estrogen, or you'll have heart problems during pregnancy. So we need all of these things working properly. And another unfortunate thing of women with PCOS is not only do they not make estrogen optimally from their ovaries, which doesn't become an issue later in pregnancy, because where's the estrogen coming from? Not from the ovaries, but from the placenta. But the estrogen receptors of women with PCOS are not working optimally. It's like receptor resistance, okay? So that makes it, a higher risk for things like heart failure and things like that in pregnancy. So it's really important to optimize mitochondrial function for fertility and for pregnancy. And so to that end, what can we do? Well, we want to do everything to lower inflammation, because we now know, and this has been studied years ago, women with PCOS, if they pull the fluid around the egg in the follicle, that follicular fluid, and you look at it under a microscope, it's filled with inflammatory cells. The ovary itself around the egg is in a pro-inflammatory state. We have to do everything to lower inflammation. When you have a lot of inflammation, it creates what's called oxidative stress. And when you have a lot of oxidative stress, it will damage the ovaries and the mitochondria really significantly. And the mitochondria won't work properly when you have all that inflammation and oxidative stress. And then you don't have enough estradiol. And in mitochondria, estradiol is critical for the creation of energy, like through the electron transport chain and so on. But also when you create energy in mitochondria as a unfortunate but necessary side effect, you create metabolites like the waste products of energy production. And the waste product is called superoxide. It's 2 oxygens, and it's super toxic. So think superoxide, super toxic. But superoxide cannot get out of the mitochondria. It's stuck in the mitochondria. It needs to be converted by an enzyme in the mitochondria called manganese superoxide dismutase into hydrogen peroxide. Now, hydrogen peroxide is also toxic, but unlike superoxide, it can diffuse out of the mitochondria into the cell itself, into the rest of the cell, where there are enzymes that can convert it to harmless water. Okay, but you've got to get that superoxide converted to hydrogen peroxide. So superoxide is O2, it's 2 oxygens. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. And what is water? H2O. Okay, so you see one thing that's what, an enzyme process is to change these things from one thing to another. But what hormone is essential for the conversion of superoxide into hydrogen peroxide? Estradiol. So you don't have enough in women. So you have more toxic, so you have oxidative stress combined with more damage to the mitochondria from the production of energy. And when you have a cell that's filled with oxidative stress because it's an inflamed cell, then of course that also affects the mitochondria. So it's like double, triple whammy. So then you'll have malfunction of all the processes that are essential in the ovary to have proper ovulation. In addition, because of inflammation and oxidative stress, the egg itself, what we call the oocyte, will have poor quality. So it may never take, even if it's ovulated out, it's a poor quality egg. And this has been shown that women with PCOS, as a general group, have poorer quality eggs. So it's not just having eggs, it's not just the number. It's the quality. It matters, like the quality. And then from quality eggs, you make quality embryos. And that's why women with PCOS have the highest failure rates of IVF, because just creating an embryo doesn't mean it's a good quality embryo. And then it will not implant and take. It's like planting a yucky seed. It's not going to grow. Okay. And then also, what are you planting it into? Are you planting it into yucky, dead, dried up soil, or, dirt, or, high quality, rich, wonderful soil? So that's what you want. You want your whole uterine lining to be beautiful and lush and properly, what we call proper secretory state. To have the most perfect secretory state, that's like perfect for implantation, what do you need? Adequate amounts of progesterone. You're not going to have adequate amounts of progesterone if you have too much inflammation. Inflammation lowers production of progesterone. And if you don't have an adequate ovulation, which will then trigger, and you don't have enough energy in your ovary to create a functional, healthy corpus luteum that makes the progesterone. So women with PCOS will often not make enough progesterone. That's why in all the infertility centers, what do they always treat women with PCOS with? Progesterone. They always give them added progesterone because they often don't make enough progesterone, and their egg will not, their embryo won't implant properly in the first place. So, they do their best, but what's the best? You're right the first place. You do it yourself, right? You do things right yourself so that, everything is right from the get-go. But you can see how women with PCOS have challenge after challenge. Now, another thing with mitochondria is that in order for them to work properly, they need a coenzyme called NAD. Now, women, this has been well studied, but very recently, this is like hot off the press kinds of information. So women with PCOS have low levels of NAD. Now, NAD is a coenzyme. Coenzyme means the enzyme systems won't work properly without it. It also works, so NAD has multiple functions in cells throughout the body. It's critical in mitochondria for the creation of energy through the TCA cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. So without adequate NAD, you simply will not make enough energy in your mitochondria. That's like huge. Other things will not work properly. Other enzymes, certain enzyme systems, like the sirtuins, which are critical for cell function in a whole host of ways. And when you don't have enough NAD, you don't have all kinds of cellular functions working properly. So you're more likely to have all the diseases associated with aging, like dementia, like diabetes, like cardiovascular disease. Guess what? All of these things are associated with women with PCOS at younger ages. So I always talk about PCOS as a state of accelerated aging. And it's a harmful and emotionally to think of it that way, but not if you know there's solutions, right?
Yeah.
The first step to understanding a problem, is to understand why it's happening, and then you have solutions. So if you know that if you do nothing, PCOS is like accelerated aging. But by giving optimal diets, exercise, stress control, all the things that we need, hormone supplementation when necessary, bioidentical hormone supplementation, whether it's for fertility or just for general health status, and other targeted supplements that can increase NAD, increase CoQ10, a very important coenzyme in making energy. Things that we know can help women's ovaries with PCOS, like myoinositol, and NAC, N-acetylcysteine, And of course, other vitamins, critical vitamins, minerals, magnesium, and so on. By measuring and giving targeted supplementation, we can change this. We can make women more like you, okay? That their mitochondria will work well, that their ovaries will do the things that ovaries are supposed to do properly, and that their hearts will work properly, their brains will work, they'll have vascular health, they'll have nitric oxide, and we can give supplements to increase nitric oxide as well. So when we talk about like NAD, it's involved in so many cellular functions. And here's another interesting reason why NAD is low in women with PCOS, because of the chronic state of inflammation. So one of the things that many things in the body are sort of tricky, and you can get confused, like, is this good or is this bad? Well, it's not good or bad. It depends on how it's being used in the right circumstance, like nitric oxide. I mentioned nitric oxide is a really important gas. It's like almost like a hormone signaling agent, antioxidant. It does all these amazing things, but it's also part of the immune response. It's part of the inflammatory response, nitric oxide. So in immune cells, they're very special immune cells. In immune cells, when you have inflammation, they actually make nitric oxide, but the process is a little different. The process is what we call uncoupled. And you not only make some nitric oxide, but you make that superoxide that we talked about, but it's done on purpose. That's not just a side effect of like mitochondria. This is an intended side effect of making nitric oxide wrong, okay? But wrong only if it's in the wrong situation. If you have an invading pathogen, like you have bacteria coming in, you're having a massive infection, sepsis, okay? Then you want your immune system to come into high action, right? Because you need to kill the pathogen. You have to kill the pathogen. How does our immune system kill invading bacteria and viruses and stuff? How does this work? It creates poisons. It actually creates poison.
Wow.
It's amazing, but they're directed. That's not like all over the place. That's like uncontrolled inflammation. So it's purposed inflammation. And part of that involves the production of uncoupled nitric oxide and superoxide, which when they combine together makes a super poison called peroxynitrites. And then you could think nitric oxide is bad. No, it isn't bad. It's only when you have uncontrolled inflammation and you're making this toxic substance that's a killer to cells. It's a killer to bacteria, but it's a killer to our cells too if it's like rampantly being produced. Peroxynitrite, we don't want that. That's harmful if it's just randomly being produced. But NAD is also part of the inflammatory response. It turns out that, not surprisingly, every living cell of every kind on planet Earth has NAD. That's how it goes back. It's like goes back in every living creature has NAD. Yeah. Name any living creature has NAD in the cells, including single cell bacteria. Now, NAD creates energy and works on cell cycles and cell functions. So one of the things that our incredible immune cells do is that it knocks out the ability of the bacteria to make NAD. It gets rid of their NAD. So how does it do that? There's a different enzyme called CD38 that's on specific immune cells. And this enzyme, CD38, that's on these immune cells, will be activated when you have inflammation, and it breaks down NAD. So that's how it can kill, along with the nitric oxide that's turned into peroxynitrites, which is poison. This is part of the incredible way that we survive in a world of pathogens, okay? But what happens when you have generalized inflammation throughout your body, like women with PCOS or aging people? That's why they call it inflammation of aging, inflammaging. Okay, now
I've heard of this.
That's a whole different world. But remember, women with PCOS are like accelerated aging. Okay, so they have what has also been termed, I didn't come up with any of these terms, metaflammaging, metabolic disease-related inflammation. Okay, so women with PCOS have a lot of metabolic dysfunction. They have leaky gut, they have systemic levels of insulin resistance, right? They have vascular inflammation. So we know that they are generally inflamed, systemic inflammation. So when you have inflammation that's inappropriate, you activate this enzyme CD38 on your immune cells, and only now you're not fighting a pathogen. What bacteria? There's no bacteria. You're just inflamed, okay? For other reasons, like you have leaky gut, you don't have enough estradiol, you have nutrient insufficiencies, you have, sleep deprivation, you have toxic exposures. There's a whole host of reasons why people can be chronically inflamed all throughout their body, generalized low-level systemic inflammation. But now you're activating CD38. Now, I already told you that enzyme becomes activated. I mentioned to you that women with PCOS have inflammation in their ovaries. This has been proven. They have inflammation everywhere, including in their ovaries and around their eggs. So now you have the immune cells. Remember, I said if you pull the fluid out from around the egg in women with PCOS, it's full of inflammation cells. Those are our immune cells, inflammatory cells. Those immune cells include immune cells that make that enzyme CD38, and that's being activated by the inflammation. So our own cells of our immune system are destroying the NAD in the ovary. So
Wow.
this is a part of the problem. That's why when you treat it by giving an NAD precursor, you don't give NAD itself because it can't get into the cell. You give a precursor like NR, nicotinamide riboside, or NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. But you give one of the precursors as supplements, and then it turns into NAD in the cell and in the mitochondria. But the thing is that if you have a lot of inflammation, if you don't address the inflammation, it's just going to be knocked down by that enzyme, CD38. So you have to do everything. We have to give the supplements, and we have to make sure that we give antioxidants. There's polyphenols that can reduce systemic levels of inflammation. We have to work on gut restoration. We have to work on our autonomic nervous system, which also can trigger inflammation. That there's no simple solution. You have to work on everything. And understanding the complexity helps to understand why you can't just do one thing. There's not one magic pill. There is no one magic pill. So you have to work hard. You're like the perfect example. I love your story because you knew you wanted to have babies one day, and you knew you had PCOS, and you knew that you had to work hard to get optimally healthy. Now, you had a lot of time, which is great. Not everybody has that much time. Like I said, some people, I have 3 to 6 months. I have to do a turnaround like that. But it's amazing what you can do when you do change in diet, change in sleep, modify stress, that we add in all the right supplements. We do all these things, and often I do give bioidentical hormones. And for women who are obese, by the way, I'm not against GLP-1 receptor agonists, but here's a very interesting thing. They haven't been shown to improve fertility. Isn't that interesting?
We've been hearing some people report that it's been helping, but it's more so an indirect effect, right? From the weight loss, maybe?
Well, it actually, it's interesting. We think that it does, but when they actually did studies directly with it, it didn't. So, but it does help with weight loss, okay? And that's not nothing. It counts as something. But what I'm saying is that when it hasn't been as good as we thought it would be. And I think that's because women with PCOS are more complicated than just weight. Okay. And as good as GLP-1 receptor agonists are in a different way. By the way, this was like 3 months. Like we're talking about 3 months. Like when
Yeah.
they just try to lose weight just to get pregnant and they just
Yeah.
give it for 3 months. I'm not saying that they don't have enough studies. I mean, let's be real. How many studies do they do that are adequate on women with PCOS?
Oh
It's
yeah.
so underfunded. It's ridiculously so underfunded. But
And
just giving like 3 months, I'm just talking, the studies were just 3 months. When they just gave it for 3 months, they did lose weight, but they didn't improve their fertility outcome. So
yeah.
if you're going to do it with the drugs, you got to do it for way longer than 3 months, but you got to do the other stuff. But then they recommend that you stop the drugs before you try to get pregnant. So it's not as simple as, and you're not supposed to be on them when you are pregnant. So there's no, they're not the like magic solution that we wish they could be. They're just
Yeah.
not, you know?
And aren't like some of the studies showing as well after the GLP-1, even though there's some weight loss, they're losing more muscle mass and actually
Well, the reality is that they lose weight very rapidly. And any weight loss program that causes rapid weight loss is going to have a lot of muscle weight loss.
yeah.
And that
isn't-
is true. They can lose up to 40% of the weight loss is muscle mass. So
Wow.
that, I mean, it could be as little as 20, but as high as 40. But that would be true if you went on a starvation diet too, which I do not advocate for.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so this is a huge problem because women need, well, like what does muscle do besides help you run faster and stuff? Muscle is the most important organ for burning fat and sugar. Okay. If the less muscle you have, the more likely you're going to have diabetes. So this is like a huge long-term question because this is the data. I don't make up the data. The data is the data. By 3 years out, this is what it is right now. Maybe it'll change. But by 3 years out, about 3/4 of people who start on these drugs for weight loss and other reasons, not diabetes, for something other than just diabetes, which is now the more common way of using it for weight loss or other stuff. But 75% are off the drug by 3 years.
And is that like
We
a
don't-
good way, or do they get back on it after 3 years? Is that what you mean? I didn't fully
That's all the data they have.
I
But
see.
and that's 3 years. So what is it after 4 years or 5 years?
Mhm.
This has to be a lifelong process.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
right now, and this could change. Right now, there is no exit strategy for getting off these drugs. Once and what happens when you go off them in pregnancy? The little data that we have on women in PCOS, I hate to tell you out there who think this is the magic bullet, is that they don't do well. They don't do well because they really haven't addressed all the underlying things that you've addressed. You know, and many of them were just on it for a short while, and they're really still, their mitochondria aren't right, they're inflammatory, their gut microbiome, nothing's been really addressed adequately. They may have lost weight, and of that, of course, it could be 40% muscle mass, and that seems like there's still a benefit. But the problem is that they're not doing well in pregnancy. And that's the same thing happened with metformin, you know, that
Yeah.
women on metformin in pregnancy with PCOS did not do better. They actually did worse because their babies ultimately did worse. So, I mean, we have to sort of get over this. There's a magic bullet drug for
Yeah.
PCOS. I think we
Absolutely.
have to accept there is no magic bullet drug for
There is
PCOS.
no.
If you have PCOS and you want to be optimally healthy, you're going to have to work for it. You know, it's like if you want to be an Olympic gold medalist, is there a magic pill?
No.
No,
It
you have to
just-
work hard.
It goes back to, oftentimes doctors say just lose weight and your PCOS will go away. It's so much more than just losing weight. Just
Yep, it
taking
sure is.
Ozempic or eating 1,000 calories and losing 5 pounds. Like it is the full body approach. There are, the lifting weights, the gluten and dairy free, the choices you make every day for 3 months if you're consistent, or 5 years if you're inconsistent, getting consistent. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but you just have to build on those habits. I know you have a
absolutely.
book on PCOS and fertility. I saw it in your office. I mean,
It's in here, right? I
earlier.
have my
It's behind you too.
PCOS SOS fertility fast track. Yeah, absolutely. That is like my kind of like a secret weapon.
Handbook.
I cannot tell you how many emails I've gotten from people saying, I got pregnant in 3-4 months, just from doing what you had in your book. And I'm not saying it's simple. it's for motivated people. Okay. It's not like there's no, like I keep always going back to how do you become an Olympic gold medalist? No one does that overnight. Nobody gets that handed to them on a silver platter. You have to work for years, and you have to work so hard, and you have to be dedicated to the cause. So women with PCOS have to be dedicated to restoring their health. And it's one of those things that I also, like I mentioned about hormones, women with PCOS do not have enough estradiol or progesterone. Okay, so it's one of those catch-22s. Often as some women can, because they're milder. Everyone with PCOS is different. There's a spectrum. It's quite a scope of differences among women with PCOS. The severity can be highly variable. Like with any disease, the severity is very highly variable. And the more severe the patient is, the more she has to work harder, of course. And if you have a significant insufficiency in the production of estradiol and you're not ovulating, you're obviously not making any progesterone from your ovary. Sometimes the only way to heal is to give the hormones. You have to give the hormone. It's one of those catch-22s. You cannot heal without the hormones. You cannot heal without the hormones. You need the hormones to heal because you need the estradiol and progesterone to do the things in the body like promote gut health, promote mitochondrial well-being, reduce inflammation so you don't have that enzyme CD38 running rampant and destroying your NAD in all your cells and in your ovaries. So we have to optimize all these different facets and that in order to make that happen, you have to give the hormones. And that is not what the conventional medical world is doing. They're giving them birth control pills, which are pro-inflammatory. Birth control pills have warnings on them that this can increase your risk of a blood clot. So why would that be if it's a health pill? Of course, it isn't a health pill. It is perfect at what it's designed to do, which is prevent pregnancy. It is not perfect for restoring health in women with PCOS. That's not what it was ever even created for. So it shuts down the ovaries, which can reduce some symptoms because you're not going to be making a ton of testosterone if your ovaries are like taken offline. So that can make it seem better, but you're not addressing any of the root causes or any of the issues. And when you have a drug that has a warning on it that it can give you blood clots, blood clotting is part of the inflammatory response. So when you have inflammation and life-saving inflammation, like say you were, traumatized, you were, hit by a truck, okay, and you have broken, lacerated skin and bones and all of this. Okay, your body goes into action immediately to try to keep you from dying. One of the things that you can die from in that situation is hypovolemic shock, like you keep losing blood, okay? And then you go into shock and you die. You go into vascular collapse. So immediately your body will start conserving fluid. It pulls fluid back in. It will constrict your blood vessels to try to maintain your blood pressure, and it starts creating clotting so that you can clot off the blood, where you're bleeding, right? So you don't bleed to death. So it's part of the life-saving response. If you are septic, like say you get a terrible infection, part of the life-saving response is activating the same mechanisms, but so that you don't have septic shock and die of vascular collapse. But also, one of the things that the body does that is amazing that can save someone's life is it walls off an infection. It creates an abscess cavity. So that it walls off the infection so that the infection and the bacteria and the infection, they don't spread throughout the whole body, creating what's called septic shock. So we don't want septicemia. We don't want bacteria spreading through the blood everywhere in the body. So if you can wall off the infection, and that's the same mechanism that creates blood clotting by platelet activation creates an encapsulation, like an abscess cavity. So it's the same general mechanism. So it's a life-saving response, but this is not what should happen in just normal women walking around, having a normal day. And that's what happens in women with PCOS. Women with PCOS are systemically inflamed. We've been proven that for a long time. And that's why women with PCOS inherently have a higher risk of blood clots, because that's part of the inflammatory response. And then when you add birth control pills, which increase blood clotting because they are pro-inflammatory, you're actually, and this has been published, you actually increase the risk of blood clots in women with PCOS. And so this is not a good strategy. This has been done and done and done for 30 years. I think it's time to move on. And what doesn't create blood clots and is anti-inflammatory, modulates the inflammatory response, is bioidentical estradiol and progesterone. Progesterone is very anti-inflammatory. I mean, we just have to get over this birth control pill thing for PCOS. And I just had to bring that into the picture because that is what is commonly given. And of course, what we try to do is make women more fertile. And if you don't want to be fertile because you don't want to have a baby, then of course you have to use some form of birth control. But I beg women, please try not to use birth control pills because they are pro-inflammatory and they actually can cause more gut dysbiosis. They're not human hormones. They're designed to prevent fertility. Women with PCOS need to restore fertility, not end fertility. So they're not health pills. And we just have to move on from birth control pills into other ways of looking at PCOS, whether you're trying to get pregnant or not. So I just had to throw that in. It's my,
I love it.
my little platform I have to talk on.
It's literally what turns women with PCOS in the wrong direction as soon as they're diagnosed. As soon as they come in and say, I haven't had a period in a year, they're handed birth control instead of inositol at a 40-to-1 ratio.
How long would you recommend if someone is on birth control and let's say they want to conceive, how long would you recommend they get off of it so that they have the, required time to get everything balanced and ready for pregnancy?
Well, the longer the better if you have time,
Okay.
but if not, minimum 3 months.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. I'm sure a lot of people are taking birth control because they were forced to, or
I
they didn't
know.
and
I
they were not
don't
aware.
blame people. I don't blame people for taking it because I do understand that it can reduce some symptoms by turning the ovaries off. But my goal is to fix the ovaries, not to turn them off, because eventually you do want to turn them back on, and things are even worse when you do.
Yeah.
I've seen it too many times. You turn them off, and then finally, after years of being on birth control pills, they say, now I want to get pregnant. And they explode with PCOS because their ovaries have been so deconditioned, they don't even remember how to do anything. They're their receptors, everything has kind of been offline for years. It's not like in healthy women, they sort of spring back. It's like a miracle. The ovaries can just come back after years and years of being suppressed by birth control pills. But women with PCOS are different. And there's no data. I only know my observations. It's not published data because there is no published data because no one's doing research on it. I just see my own observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably the most experienced doctor seeing PCOS patients. So I feel like your data is probably the most valuable data that we can actually hear from.
Well, I think it's the best anecdotal data there is.
It really is. I mean, you've seen it all. You have seen it all.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for so long. If I can think of when I was diagnosed, I think I was 19. It was 14 years ago. Imagine how many women with PCOS you've helped since then.
Yeah.
Well, I do like to brag about my longevity.
As you should.
Hopefully longevity is a good word now.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're taking NAD or supplements to help your mitochondria because you look amazing. You look so young. So I'm sure that's helping with it.
Well, I do try to walk the talk.
Yes.
I don't want to just be full of hot air. I want to be full of real, So I try to be a role model for healthy aging. And I share my own story. I was a relatively mild case of PCOS myself, and I self-diagnosed because I didn't get any help back in the day. And I had to have fertility treatments because I didn't know anything back then. I didn't know what to do. So I had fertility treatments to get pregnant with my first. And then I started figuring things out. I had to figure things out myself because there was nobody figuring anything out for me. And I was told to go on birth control pills, and they made me feel really yucky. And I stuck with them for a while. And then it's like, I don't feel good on these,
Yeah.
And also, don't I have an underlying problem that's not being addressed even back in the day? It's like, how is this helping me?
Helping?
Yeah.
Yeah, how is this fixing me? it like didn't feel right. And so I had to, do a deep dive, and in a way it was good because I had to learn about cell biology and keep learning, like, how do things work. It's like the person who loves to take engines apart and then put them back together, like trying to tinker. Of course, I didn't I did take some humans apart and put them back together, but understanding the why and how became critically important to me. And sad to say, that's not always the case in conventional medicine. I wish it were, but a lot of medical education is just, here's your symptoms, here's your drug, here's your and you say, how does this drug work? A lot of people don't know. It's like, what's the mechanism? I don't know. They just said, you have this drug for this condition. You have this drug. But I don't want to know that. I want to know what is causing the condition and how is this drug working,
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I think it put me on a path that has been, first of all, really much more interesting than just memorizing drug to symptom, but also helps me to think, like, critical thinking. I think we know that critical thinking is critical for everything in this world, right? We don't want to just rote, do this, do that, we want to understand why. The same thing with supplements. So it's like, why do you need to take an NAD precursor? How does inositol work? And we could do other podcasts on going through all the key supplements and what is the mechanism? How does this work? Why is this useful? Because I think that the public, they love learning about,
Yes.
like, don't just give me something, tell me why I should take it
Exactly.
and what's
Exactly,
it
yeah.
doing.
That's
And
how it
people are
should be.
demanding, and they
Yeah.
should be. But I
Yeah.
feel like the old day of doctor, here, patient, take this pill, and the patient saying, "Sure, doctor." Well, that's not my patient. I can tell you. I say, "Take this pill." They're going to say, "What pill? Why are you giving that to me?
Yeah.
What is it going to do to me? What's the good? What's the bad?" I mean, maybe I have like more inquiring, I want to know type patients, but I encourage that. No
Yeah.
one should just blindly take a pill.
Plus, if you know the benefits, it motivates you more to take that actual supplement or pill because you know it's going to help that. And there's a little bit of that placebo effect too. Like if you know what it's going to do, there's a chance the placebo effect can help too sometimes.
Well, I'm a big fan of placebo because it's all about the power of the mind.
Exactly.
The mind is so powerful. So
Yeah.
placebo is real. It just shows how positive thinking can
Exactly.
affect
That's what I was
outcome.
meaning.
Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, that is not insignificant for fertility. So I think I'm so glad you brought that up because being positive and thinking in a very just, optimistic way
Yeah.
that I can do this, like the little engine that could, I can do it.
Uh-huh.
I can do it. I can
Uh-huh.
do it. Like being positive is really the key. Like they talk about like getting back to like Olympic gold medalists, to part of the psychology is picture yourself with the gold medal around your neck on the podium. Picture
Yeah.
yourself as a winner. Picture yourself holding babies in your arm.
Yes.
Picture yourself looking at the positive pregnancy test. Yes, this is doable. Too many women with PCOS were told you're not going to get pregnant. How horrible is that to say to someone? And it's not true.
It's not
It is so
necessary.
not true. If
Yeah.
you have ovaries and a uterus and you have PCOS, the odds are that you can get pregnant. Now,
Yeah.
you may or may not need assisted reproductive technology, but the odds are you can have a baby. And
Yeah.
you have to be positive in your thinking, and you have to be motivated, like you want to win. You want to win, and you
Yeah.
know the prize, you know your goal, you stay true to the cause, and you don't have negative people around you. You always do your gratitude journal, your positive thinking, you do all the lifestyle stuff, you do all the, the motivational things that you need to do to stay positive. And you know what? The odds are overwhelming that you will be successful. Overwhelming.
We took this so seriously during the last month, I guess, that I was trying to get pregnant. We were so serious about staying positive. I was telling, my sister and Sirak and my mom and dad, I was like, I'm ovulating. Everything's great. I was like, let's go to the beach. I kept saying I'm laying an egg. I was just
Yeah,
joking
yeah.
about it, and
And you kept
obviously,
like saying like, I can't wait to be a mom. I
yeah,
can't wait to do this together. Oh, next in a year from now, we'll be doing this, you know? Yeah,
daydreaming all the nice things.
yeah,
That's
Know
what you should
that
do. Like
anything's
picture
possible.
picture your life 1, 2, 5, 10 years in the future as a family with
Yeah.
however many kids you want.
Yeah.
Because visualizing the future makes it real.
Mhm.
Okay? So positive thinking, doing the kinds of things like, talking to your eggs, talking
Yeah.
to your ovaries,
My
you know.
sister told me that. I had my headphones in, and she's like, "You have to talk to your eggs." I'm like, "Talk to them?" She's like, "Yeah." And then she like went on a tangent. She talked to my eggs, and she was like, "You're welcome here. This is a fertile place. You can
We
implant.
love
I'm ready
you.
for you." I was like, "What are you saying? You sound crazy." But she like implanted them while she was
Well,
talking.
we'll give her some credit.
yeah,
But
it's,
it
Well,
helps
I
when
love I love it. I love your
yeah,
attitude and I love your outcome.
thank
yeah.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That positive energy is made possible with action, at the same time.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're overwhelmed with fear and confusion and you don't know what's going on. But when you empower yourself and listen to podcasts like this, or read your book, or take the supplements you recommend, then you're more likely to feel positive about it because you feel empowered, like you're doing something.
yeah,
Absolutely. Every couple out there seeking to conceive has the power within them to be successful.
hmm
Mhm.
yes, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Felice Gersh, for coming on today. It was such an amazing conversation about fertility for anyone listening, and including ourselves here. For anyone who is interested in working directly with you, for anyone who wants to know, Dr. Felice Gersh is based in Southern California, in Irvine, Orange County. But for anyone who wants to work with you, where can they find you, like your website, and anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I'm in my office right now. I have an exam table. This is a converted exam room that I made my little video room. So I work every day and I have a team here. And so my group is called the Integrative Medical Group of Irvine. And, you can Google Integrative Medical Group of Irvine. You can Google my name. I'm not hiding anywhere. And, I have an Instagram Live. I have a YouTube channel. I think we give you all the links and
Oh,
everything.
yeah. We're going to put that all in the description so people
Right.
can click
And,
directly.
and my books are all readily available on Amazon. And so my mainstay book on PCOS SOS, and my, fast track fertility books, PCOS SOS Fertility Fast Track, have been Amazon #1 bestsellers for a long time. I don't know where they are right now, but maybe they're #1. I haven't checked.
They
but
should
they've
be.
been
If they're not, they
#1.
should be.
But they've
Yeah.
been #1 for a long time. And they're basically do-it-yourself for lifestyle books. They're not about how to take pharmaceuticals because you can't do that yourself. But, I'm not against pharmaceuticals, but most women with PCOS actually can get by without pharmaceuticals. It's amazing what lifestyle can really do for them. The only pharmaceuticals that I think can be the most beneficial, which you cannot self-prescribe, would be bioidentical estradiol and progesterone. But not all women need that either, because often by improving the status of the gut and reducing inflammation, the ovaries can do an adequate job. So everyone has to be individualized. But I do definitely believe that women with PCOS should have a medical team. It could include lifestyle support that can be like with other groups, like, in fitness and so on, like with you guys, But I think that they should have somebody like a doctor, who is in
Yeah.
charge of their care and
Absolutely.
can order and interpret the lab tests, sometimes ultrasounds and so on. And for those who want to see me, I'm open for business. Of course,
Great.
that's what I do.
Love
That's my mission in life, is to change lives.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
please tell us where we can also find NMN. I know you mentioned that.
Oh, yes.
I-
So my personal favorite product is actually, do you mind if I pick up a box of
Yeah,
it?
yeah, please show. Yeah.
I just have this, I take it myself. So I happen to have it here. The company is Wonderfeel. Okay. And what's unique about this particular product, Younger, is that it has, of course, the NMN in the proper dose. Dose matters. 900 milligrams is really the ideal dose. And so to get that, you just take 2 in the morning. But it has, as I mentioned, inflammation activates that enzyme CD38, which destroys the NAD. It's designed to destroy it in the bacteria, but it'll destroy it in your ovaries and elsewhere. So that's a problem, okay? So what can reduce the inflammation and sort of deactivate the CD38 enzyme are polyphenols and antioxidants. So included in this product is a resveratrol and 2 other polyphenols that they have here. One is like from olive that are well tested. I don't know if you can read that, but it's taking into account the problem, which is ignored, the problem of NAD destruction. It doesn't matter if you make it, if you instantly destroy it. So we got to reduce inflammation. So, you got to do all the lifestyle stuff, but this product also has included in it the polyphenols, the nutrients that will help to reduce the inflammation that activates that enzyme that destroys NAD. So this is
Amazing.
my personal favorite. I'm glad you asked. But and I don't endorse readily anything. Okay, it really has to live up to its promise and deliver the goods, or no, So I take it because one of the things that happens with PCOS, we now have all this good data that NAD drops the numbers within PCOS. And in the ovaries and elsewhere in the body. That's why they have all the metabolic dysfunction. They have insulin resistance. But lower levels of NAD happen in all of us as we age. And that is probably a reflection of multiple things. In women, lower production of or absent production of estradiol, and not every woman gets hormone supplementation, although I'm a big believer. But even when you go on it, it's not the same as having 21-year-old ovaries. Let's be real. We're not able to replace hormones to be like you're 21. And you have more inflammation, leaky gut, and other causes of chronic systemic inflammation, which then activates the enzyme that destroys NAD. So you make less and you destroy more. So aging can be viewed as a deficiency of NAD. And NAD is involved in all these cellular functions that are so critical for survival and energy production. It's like critical for so many enzyme systems and mitochondrial support. So I think, honestly, and I tell this to my patients, that everyone who is aging, that's kind of everybody, but like at what age? I mean, what is the age? So probably like 45 plus will benefit from a few select supplements that improve mitochondrial health and NAD levels, nitric oxide. I think that understanding this and supporting gut health, that this is like the approach to healthy longevity and aging, because we are all aging, as we can't help that we're not going to stop the clock from turning, but we can do things to lower the things that happen in the body that promote the age-related diseases. So the things that happen to people in their 60s instead will happen in people when they're in their 90s. So it's like pushing the inevitable way back, like 30 years. That's pretty darn good. If you could delay the diseases of aging by 30 years, and I really think we can. I am not kidding. So
I believe you. Imagine you start taking it now, like at age 30, and you just keep taking it.
I agree, 100%.
I don't know of any negative. Okay, like what age is too young? I actually don't know of any. Like women with PCOS, however old you are, it's time, because you're aging prematurely. But everyone's aging. I don't know why there would be a negative. I don't know of any. It's just about convenience and cost. But
exactly.
There's no negative to starting these like anti-aging supplements. I don't know of any anyway.
Well, you look great, so it must be.
Well, I'll take any compliment anytime.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for joining us today. I can't wait for our next episode together. Maybe next time we do a whole deep dive on supplements and all different kinds and how it can benefit each PCOS symptom. I think that'd be a really good episode. But thank
That'd
you
be fun.
again. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, it always is. But thank you, and we look forward to that next time.
And I cannot end without congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon. I have an appointment in like 4 weeks.
I'll be here.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.